I cannot pretend to describe then what I felt. I had before experienced sensations of horror, and I have endeavored to bestow upon them adequate expressions, but words cannot convey an idea of the heart-sickening despair that I then endured. The person to whom I addressed myself added that Justine had already confessed her guilt. That evidence, he observed, was hardly required in so glaring a case. But I am glad of it, and indeed, none of our judges like to condemn a criminal upon circumstantial evidence, be it ever so decisive. When I returned home, Elizabeth eagerly demanded the result. My cousin, replied I, it is decided as you may have expected. All judges had rather that 10 innocent should suffer than that one guilty should escape. But she has confessed. This was a dire blow to poor Elizabeth, who had relied with firmness upon Justine's innocence. Alas, she said, how shall I ever again believe in human benevolence? Justine, whom I loved and esteemed as my sister. How could she put on those smiles of innocence only to betray? Her mild eyes seemed incapable of any severity or ill humors, and yet she has committed a murder? Soon after, we heard that the poor victim had expressed a wish to see my cousin. My father wished her not to go, but said that he left it to her own judgment and feelings to decide. Yes, said Elizabeth, I will go, although she is guilty. And you, Victor, shall accompany me. I cannot go alone. The idea of this visit was to torture me, yet I could not refuse. We entered the gloomy prison chamber and beheld Justine sitting on some straw at the farther end, and her hands were manacled, and her head rested on her knees. She rose on seeing us enter, and we were left alone with her. She threw herself at the feet of Elizabeth, weeping bitterly, and my cousin wept also. Oh, Justine, she said, why did you rob me of my last consolation? I relied on your innocence, and although I was then very wretched, I was not so miserable as I am now. And do you also believe that I am so very, very wicked? Do you also join with my enemies to crush me? Her voice was suffocated with sobs. Rise, my poor girl, said Elizabeth. Why do you kneel if you are innocent? I am not one of your enemies. I believed you guiltless, notwithstanding every evidence, and until I heard that you and yourself declared your guilt. That report, you say, is false? Be assured, dear Justine, that nothing can shake my confidence in you for a moment but your own confession. I did confess, but I confessed a lie. I confessed that I might obtain absolution, but now that falsehood lies heavier in my heart than all the other sins, the God of heaven forgive me. Ever since I was condemned, my confessor has besieged me. He threatened and menaced, and until I almost began to think that I was the monster that he said I was. He threatened excommunication and hellfire in my last moments if I proved obdurate. Dear lady, I had none to support me then. What could I do? Oh, it's an evil hour. I subscribed to a lie, and now only am I truly miserable. She paused, weeping, and then continued. I I thought with horror, my sweet lady, that you should believe your Justine, whom your blessed aunt had so highly honored, and whom you loved, was a creature capable of a crime which none but the devil himself could have perpetrated. Dear William, dearest blessed child, I shall soon see you again in heaven, where we shall all be happy, and that consoles me, going as I am to suffer ignominy and death. Oh, Justine, forgive me for having one moment distressed you. Why did you confess? But do not mourn, my dear girl. I will everywhere proclaim your innocence and force belief. Yet, you must die. You, my playfellow, my companion, my more than sister. I never can subscribe to so horrible a misfortune. Dear, sweet Elizabeth, do not weep. You taught me to raise with me the thoughts of a better life. And you elevate me from the petty cares of this world of injustice and strife. Do not you, my excellent friend, drive me to despair. I will try to comfort you. But this, I fear, is an evil too deep and poignant to admit of consolation. For there is no hope. Yet, heaven bless thee, my dear Justine, with resignation and a confidence elevated beyond this world. Oh, I hate its shows and mockeries. When one creature is murdered, another is immediately deprived of life in a slow, torturing manner, and then the executioners, their hands yet reeking with the blood of innocents, believe that they have done a great deed. They call this resolution. When that word is pronounced, I know greater and more horrid punishments are going to be inflicted than the gloomiest tyrants ever invented to satiate the utmost revenge. Yet, this is not consolation for you, my Justine. Unless, indeed, you may glory in escaping from so miserable a den. Alas, I would I were in peace with my aunt and my lovely William, escaped from a world which is hateful to me, and the visages of men which I abhor. Justine smiled, languidly. This, dear lady, is despair, and not resignation. I must not learn the lesson you would teach me. Talk of something else. Talk of something that will bring peace and not increase of misery. Now, during this conversation, I had turned to a corner of the prison room where I could conceal the horrid anguish that possessed me. Despair?